Okay, when you picture someone with a genius level IQ, what comes to mind? Probably someone who's always talking, always has a quick answer, kind of commands the room, right? But what if the real signs of intelligence aren't loud at all? What if they're actually these quiet little habits that we tend to overlook or, well, even misunderstand? Today, we're going to dive into the surprising psychology of what a brilliant mind really looks like. So, what does intelligence actually look like? In day-to-day life. If you ask cognitive psychologists, they'll tell you to just forget that stereotype of the loud know-it-all. The real clues, they're way more subtle. They're a collection of surprising, often quiet habits that show a truly powerful mind at work. So, on one hand, you've got the myth, right? The person with all the answers, holding court, always talking. But on the other hand, we've got the reality that research points to, the quiet observer, the one who asks more questions than they answer. This is the big contrast we're going to explore, the hidden inner world of a highly intelligent mind. Because here's the key thing to understand. True intelligence isn't like a library of facts you've memorized. It's more like your brain's operating system. It's how it processes information, how it connects dots, and how it sees the world. And that powerful OS reveals itself through some pretty distinct everyday habits. So, let's start with the first group of habits. These are all about the internal landscape, the inner world of a highly intelligent person. This is what's really going on inside their head when they're not saying a single word. First up, a deep, almost cellular need for solitude. Now, hold on. This isn't about being antisocial or not liking people. It's about giving the brain's prefrontal cortex, which is kind of like the CEO of deep thinking, the quiet, uninterrupted space it absolutely craves to make connections and really process everything that's going on. And look, this isn't just a theory. There's real research from the London School of Economics that backs this up. They found that for super smart people, more socializing can actually lower their life satisfaction. For their minds, constant social noise isn't energizing, it's draining. They are literally wired to find fulfillment in that essential quiet time. Okay, habit number 2 might sound a little strange. It's talking to themselves. But before you write it off as weird, you should know that psychologists see this as an incredibly powerful cognitive tool for, getting your thoughts in order. Yeah, there's a name for it in psychology. Self-directed speech. See, when you verbalize your thoughts, you're helping your brain organize information, sharpen its focus, and even strengthen your memory. Think of it like you're debugging your own code out loud. It's actually a sign of a brain that is actively working through a problem. And then there's overthinking. I know, it can feel like a total burden sometimes, but it's often a side effect of a highly analytical brain. That same mental engine that can tackle huge, complex problems, well, it doesn't just switch off. It just keeps running, exploring every single angle and possibility, even for small, everyday decisions. So let's just pause for a second and think about this. We often see someone who's quiet, and we assume they're withdrawn or shy. We see someone talking to themselves and we think, that's odd. But what if we're just misreading the signs? What if we're just misinterpreting a brain that's in deep thought mode? All right, let's move on to our next section because it builds on this idea. This next set of habits is all about intellectual humility and just this unstoppable drive to learn. This is about the brain as a learning machine. This one it's huge. Real intelligence isn't about having all the answers. It's about understanding just how vast the world of what you don't know really is. Saying I don't know isn't a weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. It's the starting point for any real learning. This kind of flips the famous Dunning-Kruger effect on its head. That's that bias where people with low ability tend to think they're amazing. What's so fascinating is that the truly intelligent often have the exact opposite problem. They're so aware of how much there is to learn that they can actually underestimate their own expertise. And that self-awareness, it fuels this next habit, a relentless, constant curiosity. For a high IQ brain, the world is like one giant puzzle. It's this mental engine that just can't be switched off, always asking why. And not just about the big philosophical questions, but about, why a leaf is shaped a certain way, or why that one commercial is so effective. Okay, so we've seen how they think and how they learn. But now let's look at how this intelligence actually shows up in their actions. This is all about a brain that is flexible, dynamic, and constantly adapting to new information. Highly intelligent people are often incredibly willing to change their minds. They don't see their beliefs as like part of their identity. Instead, they see their opinions as hypotheses, ideas that need to be tested. So when new, compelling evidence comes along, they don't fight it. They just update their model of the world.
And the process is really as simple and as profound as that. This ability, which is called cognitive flexibility, is a true hallmark of advanced problem solving. It just shows a mind that is way more committed to finding the truth than it is to simply being right.
Now for a really fun one, a strong sense of humor. I know, it might not seem connected to IQ, but making or even just getting a clever joke requires some serious mental horsepower. It's literally a form of high-level cognitive processing in action.
I mean, really think about it. What does it take to get a joke? In a split second, your brain has to recognize a pattern, process how the punchline just completely shatters that pattern, and then connect two totally unrelated ideas. That is incredibly complex thinking, which is why study after study finds a strong link between a quick wit and a high IQ.
And the list just keeps going. We also see a tendency for them to be night owls, maybe because their minds are just most active when the world finally gets quiet. They're often very careful observers in social situations, kind of gathering data before they speak. And then, sort of hanging over all of this, is this deep, persistent drive, not just to know things, but to find meaning and purpose in it all. So, after looking at all of these different habits, what's the big takeaway here? What's the one single idea that's at the very heart of what we call intelligence? Well, we've seen it's not about being the loudest person in the room. It's definitely not about winning every argument or memorizing trivia or solving crazy math problems on a chalkboard. It is something much, much more fundamental than all of that. Because here's the core truth. When you strip everything else away, intelligence is simply a profound and relentless curiosity. It's a brain that just can't stop exploring, can't stop questioning assumptions, and can't stop trying to piece together the beautiful, complicated, and fascinating puzzle of the world around us. So that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. Whether it's in your job or your hobbies or even just in your relationships, what is the fascinating puzzle that your own curious brain is trying to solve right now?